Hello, everyone. Hello, Catherine. And I see Beth has joined and Teresa. Hello, hello. We'll get going in a minute. Just so you're aware, Ronald Servant cannot join us today. Amy Campbell, who is the District 61 Club Growth Director, will be joining us to help with the group evaluation part, similar to our first open house. One of our members, Spring, can't make it today. Teresa's going to go through the agenda, so I'm going to make sure that we have an up-to-date copy.
So James, I'm looking at the version on the website. Is that the correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's usually the latest and greatest.
Okay, great.
So the evaluation role will be Amy Campbell. It doesn't say her name because she's not a club member in a roster. And the summary will be Amy Campbell. And the rest should be as it's shown.
So which actual members will be joining us today? Just because it's my first time as Table Talk Master and I don't want to call on someone that's not a member.
That's not really a problem, right? If a guest wants to volunteer to take part in table topics, it's a good way to involve them. So I wouldn't worry about that too much.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
And I've never actually done table topics, so.
Oh, well, then I'll pick you for sure.
Fun for me, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, people are just starting to join now. Welcome, everybody. I'm going to post the agenda in the chat, and I'll do that more than once because people will miss it based on the time they join.
Okay. So it is noon. My name is Teresa Vanden Bogard, and I am wearing the hat of Sergeant at Arms today. And do we need a technology check? Is everything fine so far? Seems okay to me. Okay. And so our next thing is to go over the agenda. So, first, James will provide a few words of welcome and welcome our guests, and then introduce the guest speaker, who is going to be Dr. Dianne Saxe. I'm really looking forward to this. Then, after her speech, there will be an evaluation, followed by an exercise called Table Topics, which will be a first for me as well as possibly others on the call. And these will be led by Catherine Jones. Then there will be a summary of the meeting and a time for questions. And the intended wrap-up time is going to be approximately 1 o'clock. And over to you, I guess, James.
Thank you very much, Teresa. Welcome, fellow Toastmasters. Welcome, guests. And soon we'll welcome our guest speaker, I'm sure, Dianne Saxe. So this is a special event that came together because Dr. Saxe can't join us on a Saturday. And it's a nice opportunity for us to meet in a different format and in a different day of the week, and maybe call on some different people and involve them. So I'm glad that this worked out on relatively short notice. We still have a few people joining, so allow me to explain a little bit about what the origins of the green/fair Toastmasters were and what we're trying to achieve. The green/fair Toastmasters is a space for anyone who is green-minded with a capital G, who could be Anglophone, Francophone, allophone, you name it, that wants to practice their skills in terms of public speaking and making presentations, in terms of active listening, leadership skills that you use in volunteer organizations, and that kind of thing. And because we're an exclusively online club, and one that will, as things reopen, probably sometimes have some in-person component, we can involve people from any time zone, anywhere in Canada, and get them to be part of this team that's going to join together to work on those skills. A lot of times I liken it to something like a yoga pose. So I do an online yoga class. I thought I'd be the last person ever to do yoga, but I worked in an engineering company about 10 years ago, and there are all these people doing yoga, and they cram into this tiny boardroom and they move all the furniture. And the thing you learn in yoga is you can't go and do triangle pose or any pose properly if you don't break it down. And sometimes that means going back and breaking it down into the little bits so that you don't fall over when you go into triangle pose, because you don't really want to fall over. That's you're aiming for stability and balance. And the way to do that is to find safe ways to incrementally practice and boost skills and work on it bit by bit. And Toastmasters to me is the place where we take communication skill, listening skills, volunteer leadership skills, and make that a practice and develop those skills in a safe environment of regular and conscientious practice. Now it's time for our invocation. And of course, we're in a difficult time right now. We, in our recent meeting on Saturday, marked the horrible discovery of the graves of so many innocent children who were lost in the residential school in Kamloops, BC. And now here in Ontario, we're mourning the loss of an entire family that were victims of a hate attack in London. There's really nothing I can say that can fill that space other than to ask you to join me in commemorating the lives lost through your silence. Now, switching gears, everybody who would possibly ever contemplate having their camera on, this is the time to have your cameras on. And this is the time to be reminded that in American Sign Language, the way people applaud is this gesture. Happy hands. And that's a way that we can all, apart from reaction buttons and air clapping and things, applaud and show our appreciation for our guest speaker, who I'll introduce a bit more formally in a minute. So please welcome Dr. Dianne Saxe, who's going to speak to our group today. Great. And I would also, before we get into it, anybody who's here who's not a club member, but is a guest or a friend of the club, you're invited to unmute. Why don't we start with Morgan and just say a quick hello.
Hello, was excited to see this opportunity to hear Dr. Saxe speak again. I try every time I possibly can to hear her. Thank you so much for including me. I'm here from Guelph, Ontario.
Perfect. Thanks, Morgan. And somebody that's well known to people in Ottawa is Keith Shackleton. Keith, maybe you could say hello.
Hi, everyone. Thanks to James for setting this up, and I'm very thankful for entry to the position of deputy leader, and very appreciative of that. So wanted to see her. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Keith. And from the order on my screen, the next guest who's dropped in, I'm assuming somewhere from the KW area, is David. And I see David's hands are talking, and now I see him on camera. Hi, David.
Yep. How are you doing?
I think we're doing well. It looks like we have a good crowd and people are still joining. Some people are popping in and out because, you know, technology.
Well, if you're going to put me on a spotlight, I'm just going to turn this a little bit just so you can meet Kristen Porritt. She's the association president for Kitchener South Hespeler riding.
Great. Good stuff.
Green. Yeah. Yeah.
Great. And next up on my screen is Shell.
Hi, I'm glad to be here as a guest today. I'm particularly keen to always to hear Dianne's wise words. I straddle two ridings and I'm focusing on University Rosedale so that I can vote and support Dianne.
Wonderful. Wonderful. I'm all over that. And we also have Fiona joining us again. Would you care to say hello to the group, Fiona?
Hello, everybody. Very excited to be here. Love the Toastmasters. I've been too busy to get involved with them right now, but I'm so looking forward to hearing Dr. Saxe, whose fan I've been for a long, long time. So excited that she's running for the GPO. And I know that people in my area of Niagara revere her for all the incredible work she's done for the environment. So I'm really hoping that that's going to help our campaigns down here too.
Wonderful. I think that's everybody. Anybody else? Last call. Anybody who wants to put camera on and say hello? I'll exclude the members. Usually the members of the club are included in everything. So not to be harsh, but we'll make it a guest time. Good. I think we got everybody. And now if you'll give me a moment, I'll formally introduce Dr. Saxe and we'll give the floor over to her. Excuse me for doing this from my phone, but I know the key details, but my memory is not going to be my friend at this moment. So today we're pleased to welcome Dr. Dianne Saxe. She is Deputy Leader of the Green Party of Ontario and the candidate in the riding of University Rosedale. She's an environmental lawyer and served as the last environmental commissioner for the province of Ontario before that office was abolished by Doug Ford's PC government. On the ad lib remarks, I will note that Dr. Saxe has an amazing podcast called, I think it's the Green Economy Heroes podcast. And you should all give it a listen. It's on every platform there is. It's on iTunes, it's on Spotify, TuneIn. Google Play. So please check it out. It'll be a good source of information. And it was with that podcast in mind that I chose the theme for the meeting today to be growing the green economy. So finally, at long last, please welcome Dr. Dianne Saxe to share a few words with the group.
Well, hello, everybody. Thank you very much for having me. I must confess that I didn't know I was supposed to make a presentation. I thought I was coming to an open house to answer questions. I was just looking at, what I could give a presentation on, because I'm working on one right now about recent climate litigation, which isn't exactly the same as growing the green economy, or I can just talk about my podcast. So James, you've caught me by surprise. What would you like?
Well, in Toastmasters, Q&A sessions are par for the course. It's even an activity that a Toastmasters member could do to have an online Q&A session. And so there's absolutely no problem if you want to throw the floor open and have people take questions. And I would suggest to have it be an accessible topic. We just work from the point of view of the green economy theme. I know there'll be a panel discussion at the GPO convention on Sunday that's along those lines as well. So maybe it's a good practice for all of us to get our mental juices going, thinking about those topics.
Well, for sure. So absolutely. It's been an exciting couple of weeks for climate lawyers, but that's I suppose, a niche market. Does anybody have any questions?
My question is an easy one. How did you get the idea to do that podcast, and where was this wide spectrum of green entrepreneurs coming from? Was this from your years as a lawyer, or was it just through a network that popped up out of the ground? How did you get that done?
So I started giving climate talks in 2016. And I gave hundreds and hundreds of climate talks in my years as the environmental commissioner. And then I kept doing that until COVID locked me to my chair. And when I began, what I found, well, particularly with senior business and government groups, is they really needed to be kicked in the gut. People did not realize how serious, how urgent, how much climate change is already here and is relevant to us and isn't just about polar bears and other people in other places later. And so what I most needed to do was shock and frighten them, and which unfortunately is very easy to do given how bad the facts are. After about 5 years of that, well, I guess 4 and some years of that, there are two consequences. One is it gets really wearing giving people bad news all the time. I mean, it's a large part of what lawyers do, but climate work is so enormously, overwhelmingly bad. It's really hard on the soul. And in addition, what I found was that the audiences that I was talking to, which is admittedly a self-selected group that will come to hear a climate talk from someone like myself, didn't need to be kicked in the teeth nearly as much. What people needed now was a sense of, well, what can we actually do? Is there any hope? How do we avoid despair? And so that's one piece of it, is I wanted to find some way to encourage some hope and not just despair. Second part of it was that as environmental commissioner, I was serving all of the MPPs in the legislature. And that included a lot of people with very different backgrounds and worldviews from my own. And in particular, the more right-wing members, my impression was we're not very interested in what good could be achieved with public money or with charitable donations. They considered those things more marginal and secondary. What they were more interested in and open to hearing about was what were business doing. And I found that there was a pretty general interest in green businesses and green innovations. And so when COVID locked me to my chair, I mean, I had a very busy schedule. I had a whole year of climate talks continuing, and that all got canceled on, on or around March 11th last year. So with the extra time, one of the things that I did was I decided to start telling these stories. And I started with a list. I had some ideas. I got a volunteer who helped me make an initial list of about 20 companies, some of which didn't work out. And I thought, well, we'll see. I mean, I didn't have a sense as to how many episodes I could put out. I didn't know whether I'd like it. It's expensive to do because I pay someone to do professional editing and make sure we have professional sound, and that all comes out of my pocket. So I wasn't sure how much of this I would like to do, how much I could afford to do, both in terms of time and money. And I have been delighted, frankly, to find how many people there are across Canada doing really cool things that I didn't know anything about. So I now am much more alert when I see someone in the newspaper who's got a great green business. Sometimes I reach out and invite them to pitch me for the podcast. Past guests sometimes recommend people. I look for award winners. So Mars just gave an announcement about the 10 companies that they've selected to be climate leaders that they're going to be supporting. And a couple of them were people I'd already interviewed, and the others certainly are worth checking out. So I'm looking all the time to see where I can find people. Probably 1 out of every 10 or so that I interview, I don't put on the show because they don't actually fit what I'm looking for. Sometimes they're just too early. They're not really commercial yet. Sometimes they're not really a business. Sometimes they're not really focused on reducing our climate footprint. Every once in a while, I get someone who just can't tell a story. But what I'm finding is that, we've got all kinds of great people in Canada doing really interesting things. They don't get enough attention. They're often starved for money. And if I can help them find better audiences, more access to capital, if I can help governments understand what the green economy actually looks like, what kind of supports they need, I think it might help. And in addition, I get a lot of requests, especially from young people, but not just young people, who want to find a way into the green economy and just don't know how to do it. And so I think for those folks as well, it's really helpful to show the amazing assortment of ways there are to help build a greener future.
Wonderful. And I'll note for the audience here in our meeting today that Amy Campbell posted the link to the saxefacts.com website and the climate podcast specifically. So everybody can find that and check it out. We had numerous questions in the chat, starting with Morgan, who said, how does donut economics fit with the idea of growing the green economy?
Well, donut economics in principle are really simple. We have to look after human needs without trashing the planet. We have to work within the limits of what the planet can actually provide. And so in principle, that seems to me to be absolutely right. I have, up until now, been more qualitative than quantitative about this. I've been asking for a plausible story as to how people help reduce our carbon footprint. I haven't asked for a complete analysis of, well, really, if we did this at scale, would we be able to stay within the carrying capacity of the world? Because there's many aspects to that. There's water, there's nitrogen, there's resources of all kinds. And I'd like to get there. I think we need, clearly we need to get there. And there was a major new report, oh gosh, just today or yesterday, that I got a press alert for, that's going to be released in the next couple of days by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change and the comparable International Panel on Biological Diversity, looking at the urgent need to integrate climate action with protecting ecosystems and biodiversity, and pointing out some of the ways that they conflict and some of the ways they can be reinforced. I haven't fully integrated that yet. I'm going to be looking at that report and trying to think more about it. There's a lot of different things that I want to integrate. I want to integrate the equity aspect. I certainly want to integrate biodiversity, but my main focus at the moment is climate mitigation. And that's what those are the stories I'm looking for. I hope that ultimately they can be part of the larger picture.
Yeah, and it's amazing the number of different sorts of businesses that are out there that you would never have suspected. Some established businesses and some very young. A couple that come to mind from my binge listening to a few episodes of the podcast while doing my gardening, were a startup that's really looking at helping people make informed choices about clothing. And on the other end, you have a developer from Southwestern Ontario who had a complete concept about making more of a 15-minute neighborhood and a more livable neighborhood for all of the residents. So there's a real diversity of contributions from different kinds of players that are going on. Angela had a question in the chat on a completely different tack, which is more about like minimizing the harm. And to summarize it, she's saying basically the incumbent political parties that hold power are funding in the billions support for fossil fuel-based industries. And she's asking, how do we break up that tendency in our society?
Well, political contribution reform is really important to that. And as you know, Doug Ford has just gone backwards on that. It's not surprising that those with power and money might use their power and money to obtain government rules that allow them to increase their power and money. I heard, for example, that we know the Koch brothers in the United States spent $1 billion getting Donald Trump elected. So one might ask, did that turn out to be a good deal for them? Well, the best estimate I've heard is they made $40 billion as a result. So yes, it's a good deal for them. We have also got a real tendency, and Adam Radwanski wrote a trenchant article about this a couple of years ago, which really has stuck with me and is part of why I made the really uncomfortable decision to run for politics. Basically saying that environmentalists in Canada, and I would put in parentheses, particularly women, want to work on good policy and don't want to get their hands dirty in politics. And as a result, have been remarkably ineffective because the big decisions are made in the dirty work of politics. Or the oil companies are not shy about bellying up to the bar and pushing really hard for what they want. And they do it very effectively. Canadian Environmental Defense Fund showed that the oil industry had lobbied the federal government, I think 4 times a day from 2011 to 2018. And I'm sure it was much, much more than that in 2020. And as a result, well, everybody knows them. They have access. Their points of view are really well understood. Their influence is feared. Whereas environmental groups have, and environmentalists in particular, tend not to go into the political business because it's nasty, it's personal, it's unpleasant, it's high conflict. There's just an awful lot of things about it that are not appealing and are particularly hard for people who have a more collaborative, constructive, how do we do something better point of view. So it's a tough game. The only way we're going to change it is if more people are prepared to stand for office and to work towards both better climate law, but also, you know, better laws on governance. How do we manage campaign finance? How do we, the whole, one of the other things that you probably saw that Ford did was he banned municipalities from using ranked voting. So that you could, which actually has been proven to encourage and reward people who are more moderate and constructive.
So I have a comment in the chat from Angela, and she was clarifying that her question was about the greenwashing aspect. So, you know, government's coming out and saying they're doing all these green initiatives, but they're doing it in the form of subsidies to incumbent fossil fuel industries.
Well, greenwashing is an enormous problem for sure. I guess one of the key roles of the Green Party is to tell the truth on exactly these kinds of issues. It's harder to get that message out as local media declines. It's harder to get that message out just from the Green Party, but yes, we do have to keep documenting it. And there are some, you know, wonderful citizens groups in Alberta. For example, there's the Alberta Liability Disclosure Project, which is a few unbelievably devoted people who keep doing the work and pointing out the impacts and documenting how the oil industry is walking away from its obligations and leaving hundreds of billions of dollars of expenses for everybody else to pick up afterwards while they continue to grab billions of dollars in federal government money. Canada has publicly committed internationally 3 times now to stop fossil fuel subsidies and has not done it. It's very hard to do. Yeah, it's just very hard to do.
Well, wonderful. I think we're at our time and then a bit some. So we'll have more questions, I'm sure. Save those questions for people who are joining the Green Party of Ontario online convention this weekend. Maybe there'll be an opportunity to pop some questions in a chat there. I remember seeing Dr. Saxe speak at the last in-person Green Party of Ontario convention in Scarborough in the fall of 2019. And it's a real delight to have somebody sit there and calmly explain to you all these challenges, which is heavy, but to walk away knowing that you've gained so much knowledge from the experience. So let's all thank Dr. Saxe, and anybody, if you can, cameras on, sign language clapping. Thanks so much for that, those words, and for joining us today.
Well, thank you. I hope it was helpful. I hope it was what you were looking for. Thank you for the suggestions in the chats for companies for me to check out. I've saved the chat and I'll look for that. Thanks very much, everybody.
Wonderful. Thank you again. Now I'd like to call on a Toastmasters person, a familiar face if you were at our first open house on May the 15th, Amy Campbell, our club growth director, who's going to lead us through an evaluation exercise. Amy.
Excellent. Thank you very much, James. It is not often that one gets to evaluate a local political celebrity, but it does happen, and we do have valuable feedback that we can offer speakers so that they continue to improve on their journey. In the Toastmasters environment, everything we do is done with a positive, motivating light. So while we do offer points of improvement, we learn to frame it in such a way that motivates somebody to want to come back to the lectern and to want to try it again and keep on going. So now that we've just heard Dr. Saxe deliver her question and answer period, I'm going to put it on to you guys, and we're going to do it very, very rapid fire. So I'm going to ask for one person to put up their hand and very quickly, in 1 sentence or less, tell me, what did you really like about the way Dr. Saxe spoke? Catherine.
Always incredibly informative, and I always learn something, which I truly appreciate.
Excellent. So informative and learning. Format, I have to write quickly here. And of course, you could be the best speaker in the world. You could be the Tony Robbins of all the motivational speaking, and there is still something that he could do differently that would help connect to us. And we may feel like ordinary people, but we have valid opinions on what we hear and what we see that would help improve a speaker connect with us personally. So again, that you listening or referring back to Dr. Saxe's speak very quickly, rapid fire, I'm going to ask somebody to put up their hand and say, what would you offer Dr. Saxe as a point of improvement that would help you connect better with her speech? Oh, no, James.
Maybe one of the things to try for myself and for her would be to split everything into shorter segments. Because of the online format and to hold people's attention, it might be better to distill everything to 30 seconds or a minute and then check back in.
Oh, valid points. So again, if we go to the Toastmasters environment in which we are here, we learn to give these evaluations so that we are helping others improve, our fellow members improve, and by helping them improve, they not only improve in this environment, that's clear, but this transfers to everything they do outside of this environment. And by learning to deliver proper motivating feedback, we also become better individuals, better managers, better leaders, and better communicators because we learn how to interact positively. So I'm going to take what was said here today and I'm going to throw in my stuff that I took as notes, and I'm going to show you how a Toastmasters evaluation is done in 3 minutes. So bear with me here. I'm just taking a note of the time on the clock. All right. Dr. Saxe, thank you incredibly much for that inspirational question and answer period. I recognize that you were put on the spot with that, but you did a great job. There were things that I noticed through your speech is that you have a very calm tone and pitch. The rate at which you speak is so absorbable for me that I can hang on every word that you're saying because I hear everything and I can absorb it. I also want to commend you on the amount of information that you share. I've heard you several times before, if I had, and I want to let you know that every time I hear you, I learn something new. You are such a wealth of information in content that is valuable to me as a listener. If I might be able to offer you just a couple points of improvement, just so that the next time you're on the stage or put on the spot as you were today, it goes a little bit, you just come, I'm still learning my own words here. So that when you are put on the spot, you make it seamless to the audience. If you had not mentioned that you were not put on the spot, I'm willing to bet that there was not one person in this room that would have known that. And the way you could have overcome that was what I heard you say in the next few segments of your speech. You realized that you wanted to shock everyone, to get that fear of the climate change. But that self-actualization story took you through to realize that constant fear wasn't going to make the change. And having that little back pocket story in your ready to give at a moment's notice will begin any conversation you have in front of any group. And then you could easily transition into a question and answer period, and nobody would have any idea that it would have been any different than that. You also made the comment that the realization that story connecting or storytelling is key, and you hit the nail on the head with that. When you tell stories, we connect with you and we can make those personal connections on moments that we've experienced as well. And that just draws an automatic into you that we want to hear more because we understand that. So please do continue with that storytelling. The other thing that I think that might help you out when you're speaking with large audiences like this is keep your segments relatively short. So when you're asked a question, succinctly answer it and just do a quick check-in with the audience. Make sure your eyes are up, look at that camera, see the faces around, and that will continue to help you with that engagement level. Just a quick summary, please do keep up that incredibly absorbable pace and tone and calmness that you bring to your message. That will hit home with people. And if you never mention that you were put on the spot, nobody will ever know. Just go into that quick little backstory smoothly and everything will follow, because people will automatically, naturally have questions of their own. And finally, do continue realizing and owning the storytelling, because that always connects with an audience, which makes our messages far more powerful. Dr. Saxe, it was wonderful to hear you today, and I am engaged to hear more from you, and we'll be looking up your podcast. Thank you very much. James.
Thank you, Amy, for that powerhouse evaluation. That's how we do it, people. That is a solid and complete evaluation. Always nice to have feedback on challenges, opportunities, and highlighting the positives that you took away from somebody's work. Our next up in the agenda is Catherine Jones, who will be our table topics master. Please welcome Catherine to a imagined virtual lectern.
Thank you, James. I just wanted to check in. Do I need to be my own timekeeper?
I can keep time for the
Okay,
table topics
perfect.
people. Yeah.
Okay, so table topics is the portion of the meeting where members practice thinking on their feet and speaking off the cuff. As table master, I will present 2 questions that people can choose from, and then we'll select 3 different members to speak to the topic of their choice for 1 to 2 minutes. So pay attention, because you could be called upon. And to make this fun and keep everyone engaged, it's going to be a bit of a contest. And for those of us who are listening, we will choose our favorite speaker. Today's table topics will continue the theme of growing the green economy. So the options are: question number 1, what do you think is a critical pillar or key element of a green economy? Or 2, how do we get the general public to truly buy in to a green economy? And so without further ado, I'm going to select our first impromptu speaker, and Teresa Vander Bogaard, you're up.
Sorry.
You can talk about the
Okay.
weather, Teresa, if that gets
Yeah.
you rolling.
Yeah, or do you want me to repeat the questions?
Well, I think I understand what the questions are. I guess maybe I'll take a stab at the second one.
Okay.
So, how we get the general public to buy in. I think that there are quite a few different strategies that we can use sort of in concert with each other. And they have to happen at different levels. At the individual level, for example, there are neighbors, you know, and you can talk about solutions that can be implemented at the neighborhood level. Maybe you want to explore, say, changing to a heat pump, and maybe do like a group purchase or something like that. So that would be an example. There's getting involved in your community association and advocating with your city councillor and your networks across the city to advocate for particular issues that would move the debate forward. There are lots of examples here in Ottawa about that. What else? I'm not a big social media person, but I know there are opportunities on that front as well. As a person who is about to go back into academia, I actually see a lot of opportunities for things that some people know, but other people don't know, like research that's happened in academia that can be communicated in different forms to different audiences, maybe articles or blogs or podcasts, as Dr. Saxe has initiated. And so I think there are a lot of opportunities for information sharing and discussion. And at least from where I sit and how it feels today, it seems like a lot of people are interested and want to talk about the issues. And for example, as we've seen with the really quick sign up for the federal green homes, the program through NRCan, that apparently has gone crazy, and I have no idea how long I'm going to have to wait to get my energy audit now as a result. So I think that there have to be a lot of different people sort of picking away at the communication problem and raising the level of debate in the way that they can to the people that are listening to them. And if we all did that, I think we could make quite a bit of progress. I have no idea how much time that was. Is my time up yet? Okay.
Yeah, that was about 3 minutes exactly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so see, once you got going, you had no problem filling the time, this is an important piece of learning. Okay, back to Catherine.
Okay, thank you very much, Teresa. Mark Wong, I'm wondering if you'd be willing to speak next.
Yep. Sorry, what was the question? Was
Sure,
it a table topic?
Yep, I'll tell you them again. The first one is, what do you think is a critical pillar or key element of a green economy? And then the second one is, how do we get the general public to truly engage with a green economy?
Okay. One of the greatest pillars in a green economy is technology. The way that technology is moving nowadays is making wind energy much more viable. It's making solar energy much more viable. And all this will make the economy much more profitable. And it inherently will have a lot of people interested in what green energy has to do. It'll make it much more viable in economics. And all we need to do is make sure that competition is there for these companies that are up and coming. I think all this, our timer seems to have turned off his camera, so I don't know what time is. Okay. Yeah, sorry, I'm a bit distracted, so I'll just end it there.
Okay, and for our last speaker, Morgan Dandy Hannah, you're up.
Thank you very much, Madam Table Master. I will take on the first topic. I've been a proponent of the donut economics for quite a while now. I'm almost at the end of my second iteration of a book club with my local community. And I believe that in order for us to have our economy get to where it needs to be, we need to ensure that we follow the 12 and the 9. So there's 12 pillars which have to do with social justice and making sure that no one falls below the social platform, or the social platform, and making sure that nothing that we do goes beyond the 9 identified ecological ceilings, most of which we're already overshooting and have really locked ourselves into what will become a negative biofeedback loop. So in order for us to ensure that everything that we need to do to thrive from now until the end of the time that humans are on this planet, which is hopefully many, many thousands of years from now, we need to get our ecological ceiling under control and make sure that we are all thriving on that donut, because no one is falling below the social foundation of our society. Back to you, Madam Table Master.
Great. Thank you to everybody for really wonderful topics. Teresa spoke on how to get the public to really engage with the green economy. And she was speaking about using multiple strategies. So, working at local levels by talking with your neighbors, interacting with politicians, the use of social media and all its different aspects, and how that there is a hunger amongst people, and that is being demonstrated if we look. And one example of that would be the great interest that's been expressed in the federal grant program. Our second speaker was Mark Wong, and he chose to speak about which he felt was one of the most important or critical pillars of the green economy. And he believes that that relates to technology. And examples of that would be about how the viability of wind and solar power has increased, and the positive impact that that will have on growing our economy. And because of the positivity of that, that will actually work to engage more people into believing that the green economy can actually work. And our last speaker, of course, was Morgan, and she chose to speak to the critical aspects of the green economy. And she really believes firmly in the use of the donut economics theory and the 12 pillars relating to social justice and how that's so important, and always operating, with the 9th pillar about not exceeding our ecological ceilings. And once we address sort of containing things within that 9th pillar and social justice, the green economy will flourish and everybody will be truly involved. So now what I would like to do is request that everyone send me a private message with the name of your favorite speaker. And then towards the end of the meeting, I will announce the winner of the bragging rights for today's Table Talk contest. Thanks very much.
Wonderful, Catherine. And we are now going to go back for a quick few words of summary by Amy Campbell. Amy.
Speaking of being put on the spot, well, Toastmasters is a phenomenal way to practice that impromptu speaking. And I'm sure that as we were hearing those questions, we had these moments of, oh my goodness, what would I say to that? And Teresa, I do want to commend you. You did a phenomenal job of recovering on that. A little trick that I will share with you is that when you get a question, take a moment, repeat the question, because while you're saying it, your mind will be doing something in the background. And you are free to do what politicians do and just switch that question right around to something that you are comfortable answering. So if I had been put on the spot, I admit that I would not have a rather intelligent answer to satisfy many in this room. But what I could say about that is the desire that I want to learn more about it and what I have studied and where that might help me in my academia to learn more about this topic. A great way of still addressing the information, but allowing your own personality to come through and your own honesty and vulnerability. But Teresa, I do commend you. And the same with Mark as well, being distracted with the timer. Well done. So do remember that impromptu speaking is that moment to have that panic. But by doing this, we practice to speak succinctly and on topic as we can, and within a time frame that people can, as James mentioned earlier, those small segments that we can absorb and then check in with the person who asked that question. James, I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you, Amy. Those are all wonderful tips, all good advice. I might have, in a moment of panic, started talking as I was to my kids about how, as a joke, the Winnipeg Jets are the rightful team to progress to the next round of the playoffs or something like that. You don't have to speak to the actual question. You can improvise in all kinds of ways, which could be humorous or just off topic or yammering away as I am now. Now's our time for questions. But before we get quite into that, I want to leave you with a couple of things. First one is that our next meeting will be Saturday, June the 19th at 1 p.m. Eastern time, when our guest speaker will be Dimitri Lascaris. Dimitri being the person who finished a close second in the race to become leader of the Green Party of Canada last year. The other point that I wanted to make was that we always encourage people to become full-fledged members of the club. The first step to doing that would be to remit, I believe it's $125 Canadian. The amount will go slightly down after a week or two because we count the months in Toastmasters. And this entitles you to be a full-fledged member of the club through the end of April 2022. And there is some incentive from Toastmasters International for people joining now. You will save a $20 US fee that's charged new members, and the club will save a fee of $125 US that's charged to all new clubs. So there's a savings there that's probably $40 Canadian per person spread across 20 members. Little incentive to encourage you along the way. Now, I'll open the floor to questions. Anybody have questions about this meeting in particular or Toastmasters in general? This is that time. I see Shell's hand up. Go ahead, Shell.
Hi, it's not a question about Toastmasters, but it's looping back to what was being spoken of before. Contrary to the feedback that Amy was suggesting for Dianne, I was so impressed with her honesty of acknowledging the fact that this was not what she was expecting, and dealing with that in the moment, and which enabled her to give a brilliant example and presentation of how well informed and what a great speaker she is, that she could overcome that. So to have tried to put that aside and pretend that, okay, I'm gonna pivot, and now I'm gonna get away with I disagree with you on that point.
Yeah, and I think it's the stereotypically male presentation style to pretend that we're always mansplaining and we always know, and we never screw up when we screw up all the time. And then we recover by pretending that we didn't screw up, right? So it's the male thing almost probably across most cultures as well, is like, mistake, what mistake? I meant to do that, right? And so that is actually a Toastmasters trick, right, to overcoming anxiety. But yes, there can be the contrarian approach, which is to say, well, I wasn't aware, so what do you suggest? Which is a bit more collaborative, but it shows the more honesty or vulnerability for sure. But I think the default that's taught in Toastmasters is to just not acknowledge that everything's broken and that hornets are flying around in your brain, because it helps you to maintain your authority, if you will, as a presenter. That you hold the space in a virtual or physical lectern in front of an audience, and are the legitimate person to be speaking to that audience in that place at that time.
Yeah, but that kind of circles back to almost the same point of maintaining your authority, as opposed to here we are humans together trying to figure out how to survive.
Yes, yes. And so the balance between that is sort of like the talking stick concept, right? Where it's like, yeah, where everybody's going to have a turn to be heard and understood. And this happens to be my turn. I see Morgan's hand is up. Go ahead, Morgan.
I just sort of to come at all of that from a different angle, maybe take it as a learning point for everyone that when we are putting things together, and even when they are short term, sometimes things don't get quite communicated as effectively as we thought they did. And we just need to make sure that our communication is as concise as possible and that our words are conveying that which we wish them to convey so people understand what's expected of them.
Indeed. Yeah, you said it all. Anybody else have a question or a comment about today's meeting? I see Catherine's hand up. Go ahead, Catherine.
Yeah, I have a question just for my own learning. Morgan, Dianne, Hannah, you had some concerns with my use of the term buy-in, and I'm just wondering if you could clarify what that is, because I'm not sure I really understood. I was happy to accommodate, but I didn't really get it.
Sure. Thank you very much for the question, Catherine. One of the things that I have started understanding since I have been studying donut economics is how pervasive words of the economy have become in our overall language. And by reducing everything to an economic exchange, we've lost our sense of citizenry and have become consumers. So when we are hoping to amplify someone's voice, when we are hoping to engage others, when we are seeking collaboration, we've lost the ability to use words that don't have a monetary aspect to them. And it is something that I have made a point for me to try and stop using economic words when there are so many other words in our wonderful English language that actually portray what we mean better.
Thank you so much. That really makes it clear, and that's a really great point.
Thank you for asking.
Very good, everyone. Is there anything that you would categorize as an urgent burning question or comment, or something to share with the group for the benefit of Toastmasters? Seeing nobody coming forward with an urgent burning comment or news to share for the benefit of Toastmasters, I will remind you that our next meeting is Saturday, June the 19th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time with our guest, Dimitri Lascaris. And that's being the end of our meeting today. I've got the mighty gavel. See if I can get that to show with the fake background. This meeting is adjourned, people. Thanks so much.
We didn't announce. We didn't announce the winner of the contest.
Oh my goodness. That is business for the benefit of Toastmasters.
It is, yes. Sorry,
Catherine,
I was waiting for
over to you. I knew there was something else in the question period besides date of next meeting, and I forgot it's the Table Topics winner. Who gets bragging rights?
It is my great pleasure to give bragging rights to Morgan, Dianne, Hannah.
Thank you, everybody. Enjoy your week.
We will do that. Okay, adjourned now, for real. Meeting adjourned. See you all next time. Bye, everybody.